This pattern is going to be high visibility Comparadun. I really like this pattern for a number of reasons. One is it's really visible because we will end up putting a kind of a Z yarn white wing on it to dry fly. And you can, just by changing up the colors of the hackle and the thread and the dubbing, you can actually tie this in to represent a multiple grouping of patterns. So today we're going to be tying this up more along the lines of uphill morning dun. So it's going to be more of that kind of bluish color. So I've got my thread attached to my hook here, and we're just going to add the smallest tiny little bit of dubbing here. I've seen tyers use thread for this piece, and you know, doing a little dubbing ball. Just a little bit easier for me to do the dubbing ball. Especially I'm using nano silk TroutFly as my thread here, which means it doesn't build up a lot of bulk. So I would have to take a lot of thread wraps to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish here. If I switch my glasses, I can actually see what the hell I'm doing. That's better. All right, I can see all those fibers now sticking out and looking all messy. So again, all I'm trying to do here is I'm going to create a little bump back here. So I'm just going to take some thread wraps, kind of one, keeping that thread tight, right over the other, right there at the bend of the hook. And that's all I want to accomplish is that right there. And what that's going to do is we're going to now tie in a tail, and I'm just going to turn to some white cooked alien here for the tails, and I'll grab 6 to 8 fibers of this, holding it out straight out from the stem like that, and then pinching the tips like that, and then we can just rip that right off. From there, I'm going to switch, keep that pinch tight just so that I don't lose my alignment. And I'm going to want this tail about the length of the body of the hook, or the body of the fly here. If I was going to err, I'm going to err on the side of it being a little bit too long rather than too short. And I'm okay with that. So we're going to go ahead and crank this down a little bit more now. And basically what that little ball of dubbing does for us there on the back is it's going to help split those tails out and keep them kind of uplifted. And hopefully you're kind of able to see that here. But with that done, we're going to go ahead and just move right up towards the front of the fly. Clip off this excess. There will be a little bit of a taper to this, but not a lot. And we're in business. So from here, we're just going to move our way back down to the back end of the hook, and we're going to use that same dubbing we used for the dubbing ball. And we're going to use it to put together the dubbing body here. And I'm using superfine. In this case, I'm using the blue dun. It's just kind of a lighter gray kind of color, which is what I'm looking for here. So I'll pull out some dubbing. So we're using superfine here, which I just love this material. It'll dub tighter than just about anything you'll find elsewhere. So anyway, we'll just kind of work our way up the shaft of the hook here now, doing our best to create touching wraps. We're going to go back and forth over the top of itself a few times because we do want somewhat of a taper. Now that I've got another bunch of dubbing on here, we should be able to bring this up to our next tie-in point. We'll just bring it up about that far. And I'm just going to use that extra dubbing here to add a little bit of taper. So next material is just going to be some white Z yarn. And there are a variety of different ways that you can tie this in. I prefer this kind of the method that you'll see here. Obviously I prefer it because I'm using it. So I'm going to get that sticking pretty much straight out, and then I'm just going to go more figure 8 style, bringing a few wraps across on either side of that material, and we'll get it locked in place just like that. So in theory, you'll have something that's kind of looking about like that. So what I'll do is just take a couple more of these figure 8 wraps around here just to make sure I have this guy all nice and secure and in place. It's not going anywhere. So once I have that kind of secure in place, what I'll do is I'll kind of spread it out a little bit to create a little bit more surface area, more or less on this, that hopefully you can see there, looking kind of like that. Once I've got it right about there, I'm going to go ahead at this point and I'm going to go ahead and fold these two up. I'm going to take some wraps in front of it with my thread to just help it stand up a little bit. And once I've got a few of those wraps in place like that, I'll go ahead and spread these out again. Because we did the figure 8 in that, it's going to be fairly straightforward in terms of getting those spread back out again. So at the end of the day, I'm going to want wings that are kind of separate from one another. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do an initial trim here just with my hands or with my scissors here. We'll trim it further later, but this will just help get some of this material out of the way as we tie the rest of the fly. So now that I've got the wing in place, okay, so our next step is we're going to tie in a hackle, and as usual, I always turn to Whiting. I love their hackles for consistency all the way through a shaft, as well as strength. But we're doing the pale mooring, so we're going to do this in that lighter color of hackle, and I've already prepared it with the stem kind of sticking down there like that. We'll go ahead and take a wrap on one side of it. I'm going to pull it towards the eye of the hook just a hair. You want to be careful. You don't want to pull too tight or you'll just pull it right out. And then from there, I'm going to just move back up towards the eye of the hook. And while I'm doing that, what I'll be doing is securing down the stem on that hackle feather. And I'll use my rotary like I always do and kind of turn my vise to where I see that extra stem sticking out. Get that nice and clipped off. Clean things up front a little bit, and then we're going to move our way back to where we've tied in our hackle. And at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to put a tiny little bit more dubbing on here. So now that we've got just a little bit more dubbing on, I'm going to go ahead and go back a little bit just to cover up a little bit more of that stem. Then I'm going to move forward, and we're going to do at least one figure 8 going through those wings again, which will just give us some dubbing there, where there were just thread wraps before. So it just kind of helps clean up the overall kind of look of the fly. So now we're ready to go ahead and start moving our hackle forward. I'm not using my bobbin cradle here because my hackle feather is actually, because it's, you know, it's a very long feather still. So I have plenty to hold on to. I don't need hackle pliers, and I don't necessarily need to rotate this. And we'll pull that wing back, and we'll get a couple of wraps up here in front, and then we'll just go ahead and tie this. Once we have our hackle pretty well secured, let's go ahead and I do have my vise twisted here a little bit because I want to clip this stem really close to. So we're now here, and I'm going to go ahead and pull some of this back, and we're actually going to finish this off with a little bit more dubbing. We're going to put one bit more of the dubbing material up front. Okay, so once I've got it to about that point there, we'll go ahead and grab our whip finisher. We'll whip finish this, and then we'll do a little bit of maintenance work on it, and we'll call it done. Pardon the pun, because it is a done. I don't know why I do that. I don't do it on purpose, which is kind of an odd thing. Pull that nice and tight. I'm going to come up front and I'm going to trim off the wings. And usually what I'll do is hold them together and trim them off. In this case, I'm not going to do that. I want these clipped off so that they're just barely above, just slightly above the hackle, where the hackle is standing up. And I can see that a lot better if I just kind of look from the side here. And try to get rid of some of those longer fibers that are in there. Kind of brush my scissors through there a few times to get rid of material that just kind of got stuck in the process. But one thing that I will do, and I think it was Charlie Craven that I watched do this and thought, hey, that's a really good idea, is he kind of went in underneath the very bottom and cut like a V out of those hackle fibers. So now that we've got that little V cut out of there, hopefully you can see that as I turn this, but you can see the V on the bottom there. And what that's going to do is these hackle fibers on either side are going to act as kind of legs a little bit, prop this up in the water, and then you'll have the wing on it. But really great fly. Not really difficult, overly difficult to tie. And it's incredibly flexible because you can tie a lot of different dry patterns just using this particular pattern or this method. So give it a shot.